Hello, everyone. My name is Jules Keith Lee, and I'm with the Center for Teaching and Learning at UNC Charlotte. We are very excited today to have this presentation on academic integrity and virtual learning being presented by the Student Conduct and Academic Integrity team at UNC Charlotte. Our team who's presenting today, I'm going to introduce them. So James Lorello is the Associate of Students and Director of Student Conduct and Academic Integrity. James joined UNC Charlotte after spending years in conduct at Appalachian State University. James recently completed his doctorate in Cultural Foundations and Educational Leadership at UNC Greensboro. James loves working in conduct because it gives him the opportunity to support a student and connect them to university resources when they may be at their lowest point. Another presenter today with us is Sean Knight, the Assistant Director of Student Conduct and Academic Integrity. Sean joined UNC Charlotte in August of 2018 after serving at UC Davis as Judicial Officer for 2 years. In that role, he worked exclusively with academic integrity cases. Sean is currently pursuing his doctoral degree in educational leadership at UNC Charlotte, and within that office, he serves as a primary staff advisor for the Student Conduct Board. And last but not least, Laura Bizzell is with us today as well. Laura is the Assistant Director of Student Conduct and Academic Integrity. Laura came to UNC Charlotte in 2012 to pursue her undergraduate education and stayed to complete her graduate degree as well. During graduate school, she served as the graduate assistant for the office, and Laura began serving as Assistant Director of Student Conduct and Academic Integrity in August of 2018, and primarily works with the academic integrity process. Thank you so much to James, Sean, and Laura for this presentation today. We're very excited. I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to you.
Thank you. Sorry, it took me a second to find the unmute button. As usual on these Zoom meetings, it always seems to happen to someone. Thank you all for joining us. Glad that we could do another session of our academic integrity and virtual learning. Thank you also for the introduction as well for all three of us. So no need to do that over again for who we are presenting to you today. So we decided to sort of do this presentation for you all because obviously we're in kind of a unprecedented situation, and we also have had a lot of changes within our office and within the academic integrity code over the last year, and felt like it was a good combination to talk about some of those things and what it might look like this year, this semester specifically, and how we can best help and assist you throughout the process. So Laura, go ahead. Thanks. So what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to go over a little bit about data and trends with you briefly for what it's looked like in the last year, and also really since COVID-19, what the start of the semester and summer sessions looked like according to academic integrity and the data that we have about that. We're going to review the prohibited conduct and what it looks like in a virtual environment. So what is cheating, plagiarism, what are the common examples we're seeing right now? I'm sure many of you may also have some of your own as well that you might have experienced recently. A bit about the process. So the process was changed and revamped. Last year is when we really started with a brand new code of student academic misconduct. And so we've only made small changes this year, but we're going to go over specifically what the process looks like and also the online components of that. So you can now fully go through our process in a remote function. You don't have to send anything paper to our office, things like that. So Laura will talk a bit about the process. Sanctions, what are some sanctions that are available to you? The what ifs for what if any that many of you probably experience on a day-to-day basis. We take these via email too, all the what ifs, but we're going to go over just a couple with you today. And then tips and strategies for the virtual learning environment and resources that exist to help you navigate some of those things. That's the goal. That's what we're doing today. Just briefly about the data and trends I wanted to share with you. So this is comparing 2018 to 2019 and then 2019 to 2020 academic years, which is when we would do the switch over to our new code that we created and the revamp of our process. And so since that time, cheating is up 50%. And plagiarism 21%, informal resolutions are up 50%. So those are what many of you may know as settlement forms. Under the new code, they are called informal resolutions and informal resolution forms. We just find ourselves using the settlement form language often. And so that's a big increase. One of the things that I really like to highlight and have highlighted since we've started navigating these numbers is that it used to be when you combined our process, because student conduct and academic integrity includes the code of student responsibility, so alcohol, drugs, those sorts of things, plus academic integrity. Well, now when you combine those things together, it used to be that alcohol and drugs were number one, followed by, maybe noise violations or something like that in housing. Well, now it's alcohol and cheating that are at the top. And so cheating is rivaling alcohol use, and I suspect it will this semester. It will definitely be the number one, since we won't necessarily have tailgating or anything like that. And so that's huge, and something we want folks to recognize how often this is taking place and what the outcomes look like for that. And it's also encouraging that informal resolutions are up, because that means that you all are engaging with our process. We know that since it was revamped, hopefully it's easier and more faculty friendly for folks to use it. So informal resolutions are up, and we also have a lot of facilitated resolutions, which is the middle part of our resolution process, and a lot less hearings, because we're able to resolve things within our office through facilitated resolutions. We've only had a handful of hearings in the last year versus previous years, it was all hearings. So thankful for some of the changes we've made. But and since COVID, we also are seeing an increase in our numbers for what we're seeing happening virtually and what you all are reporting to us. So we'll articulate some of that to you today, but thank you.
Thanks, James, for that introduction. So we'll kind of first start by talking about the Code of Student Academic Integrity and what that prohibited conduct is within the code. And we won't spend too much time on this, because we do want to spend the bulk of our time today talking with you guys about those tips and strategies for the virtual environment. What are some resources that either our office or the campus has that you guys can utilize. But we do want to just kind of start with some groundwork about what those violations and that prohibited conduct is, and then a little bit about the process, but to really spend the bulk of our time with some of those resources that will hopefully be able to help you guys this semester. So this slide just really highlights what those violations are in the code. And so we'll kind of briefly go over individually what they are and highlight some virtual examples that we've either already been seeing or anticipating that we may likely see this semester. So the first one being cheating. I'm sure everyone is familiar with what cheating is, and maybe you have your own examples of what you've seen in your own classes. But with cheating, we're mainly talking about using some type of unauthorized material. So whether that be, using notes on a test, or getting some type of unauthorized material, or using unauthorized resources when you're completing assignments or homework or something like that. So that's kind of the key term that we usually talk about when we talk about cheating. And so some virtual examples that are on here are students exchanging answers or course material through GroupMe or other electronic forms of communication. We've gotten some questions about other things such as Discord and those types of community groups. And so we are seeing some of that, which can be difficult to track down or to kind of catch. When we have seen it, it's other students that are reporting their fellow classmates for it. So that's a good sign that they are being proactive in that and reaching out to their instructors. But we have already started seeing that this semester. Other thing that we see quite a bit is using tutoring or other third-party study websites without authorization and getting either questions or answers from those sites. So you'll see some examples up here of Chegg, Coursera, Quizlet, and GitHub. So these sites are, they can be used for good and to help students study or create flashcards. And so they do have some good tools and resources for it. The way it becomes a problem is if they're being used when they're not supposed to be, or if students are actually uploading material to those sites, which we'll talk about in a second, which is a separate violation of the code. But that is when we do see quite a bit. The next one is talking about Respondus Monitor. So if you are using this software to proctor your exams, which if you're not familiar with it, it actually records the student taking the test, and you can go back and watch those videos. But if you are taking, or if you are using this software, if you are seeing that students' videos are being flagged, we do encourage you to go look at those videos to see why is it being flagged? Maybe it's not an academic integrity issue. Maybe it's just something weird that popped up, but it could be. And so, believe it or not, students do use notes or their cell phones, even though they're being recorded. And so we do encourage you to go look at those videos if there is a concern with those, just to see what could be on there. We also see distributing test questions or other information about the course before a scheduled exercise, such as a test or something. So if you have one section of your course taking a test, on Tuesday, and the next session taking it on Thursday, sometimes students will share answers like that. And it could be through some of those other communication tools, such as GroupMe or something like that. And again, with those, other students are reporting that, so that is a good sign. And then the last one, taking an exam or a test for another student when you're not supposed to be taking it, it's the other student that's supposed to be taking it. We actually haven't seen this a lot, but I know this is a concern for probably some faculty in the online environment, but a positive is that we haven't seen that, and so hopefully that is not great. The next two, fabrication and falsification, these are ones that we don't see too much, but are violations in the policy. So fabrication being inventing or counterfeiting information, and then falsification being altering that information. Usually we see this with classes that do a lot with research or data, chemistry labs, and that kind of thing. So not much is likely going to change with these in the online environment, but they are prohibited conduct in the code. Next, we have plagiarism. I'm sure you're also familiar with this one. This is our second most violated policy. So presenting the words or ideas of someone else as your own without acknowledging the source. And the examples we have up here aren't necessarily for the virtual environment, because plagiarism can happen in either way, and it's kind of the same across those lines. But these are some of the ones that we do see most often. So directly quoting from a source without a citation, paraphrasing without acknowledging the source. Those are the ones that we see the most. The top one is submitting work from a ghostwriter or a commercial writing service. This is also known as contract cheating. We don't see this one too much, but this is a big thing that's kind of within the academic integrity field. That's a growing concern among other universities and academia in general. So we know that's out there, but we don't see it too much here, or we're not getting reports about it, but know that that is something that is out there. One way to combat some of these things is to use Turnitin SimCheck. And so this is a plagiarism detection software where you can upload students' papers into this, and it will check against other papers or other online content for similarities. And so if you do this, it will actually pop you back out a similarity score and tell you which statements or content in that student's paper is popping up similar to something else. So this is a great resource if you do assign papers in your class and you want to use that. And sometimes it may pop up similar and it's not actually plagiarism. Maybe it's just that they've directly quoted from a source. And you can go back and check that to make sure that they have acknowledged that source correctly. But it is just kind of a good baseline to see if a student's writing is similar to something else that's out there. Misuse of academic materials. This is one that I kind of touched on before, but most of the time we see this with sharing or distributing course material. And a good example of this is some of these third-party websites. And so uploading course material to these websites without authorization, that would be a violation of this policy. And so sometimes students will upload this course material up there, and they're not supposed to be doing that. One, because likely it's not going to be authorized by you as the instructor, and it's not their intellectual property, so they don't have the right to be able to do that. And so again, with these sites, they can have some good study tools on them. For instance, the flashcards. We have run into situations where maybe students are using those flashcards. They've uploaded some course material and use that tool to be able to study. There is a feature on there where you can actually make your account private. And so if you do make it private, then that is helpful because you can upload that material up there and study with it for yourself. But if it's being used in the public domain and not under that private setting, then that can become an issue. And then next we have unauthorized collaboration. So this is used to also be known as complicity, but we formalize it a little bit more and combine some pieces between complicity and cheating, and have this new charge in the code. We've also tweaked it a little bit this year to not only include students, but also change the language to include individuals. We had some faculty come to us knowing that a student's parents had actually helped them out on a test or a paper or something like that. And so we wanted to expand the language in this charge to include anyone that could be helping them. So basically sharing the work or effort in an academic exercise with another person. This could be working together on homework, tests, or just sharing that material as well. So some of these are similar. So this is kind of similar to cheating in some aspects, but there are some variations in that. And then our last two, multiple submission. This is submitting academic work for credit more than once. And so students can do this if they do get prior permission from the instructor. If not, that is when it becomes a violation. And again, not too many differentiations between the virtual environment and otherwise, but also a violation of the code there. And then the last one, research misconduct. This is included in our code, but if this were to come up, usually we see this with graduate students, whether that be with their thesis or their dissertation or something. It will go through a separate policy with a separate office to do an investigation. But if it is found that that policy has been violated, then it would come to our office and into the Academic Integrity Board for sanctioning purposes. So it is included in the code, but it also goes through a separate process as well. So those are, like I was saying, the violations in the policy. So we wanted to kind of lay that groundwork and then touch on the process a little bit. So if you do run into these issues, then what do you do about it? So we have 3 different resolution options that we can navigate these cases with. And in all 3 of these, the first step pretty much is to contact our office to either consult about what's going on. Maybe you're unsure if it meets the policy definition or whether it really is a violation. And to also check for prior. So if a student does have a prior violation, then they're not eligible for the informal resolution. So that option is reserved for first time offenses only. And so that's why we want you to check with us either by email, is the best way to reach us now, or you can also call us and we can get that information for you to help you figure out which resolution option is best for you. So like I said, the first one, informal resolution, that is an agreement between the student and the instructor about what happened, that a violation did occur, and then if the student accepts that, then they would be agreeing to any of the sanctions or the consequences that could come from that violation. Because even though it is an agreement between the student and the instructor, it still is a formal paperwork and it does have to be submitted to our office. So we do want you to report those through that process, but that is a little bit more informal and we're just kind of the record keeper of those things. And then the next one is a facilitated resolution. So this is a new option that we've been doing for about a year now. So we put it in the last code that we did in 2019 is when we started that. And really it's where our office is just getting a little bit more involved in the situation and we're trying to facilitate some type of outcome between the student and the instructor. So this can be used if a student does have a prior violation. It can go through a facilitated, or maybe you're having trouble getting in contact with the student and we can help navigate that as well. And then the last one is the formal resolution, also known as the Academic Integrity Board hearing. So this is where 2 members of that board, as well as a trained student panelist, would hear the case and make an independent decision themselves. And so like James was saying, we're not having too much of those anymore. We still have those obviously throughout the year, but we are seeing success with the facilitated resolution. And then obviously the informal resolutions are the ones that we do see the most. All of these are occurring virtually right now. So from our office's perspective, we are still doing those facilitated resolutions virtually. And then we have done some of those hearings virtually, and those went well. So we are able to continue in the process even though we're online. And most of the informal resolutions are also occurring virtually as well. And so we also wanted to highlight what are some of the sanctions that can be offered in the process and through the resolutions. And so this is broken up between informal resolutions and then those other 2. So you'll see for the informal, there is a limited amount of sanctions that can be offered through that. And so the most severe sanction that can be offered through that process is a reduced grade of F for the course. If it is a serious first violation and you think it may warrant a more severe sanction, then we may need to move on to either a facilitated or a formal resolution to be able to do that. One other one that we want to highlight on here too is the resubmission of the academic exercise. So we did get some feedback from faculty saying, you know, I don't really want to penalize this student. I don't really want to give them, you know, a harsher grade, but I really just want them to, you know, resubmit the academic exercise properly and without any type of misconduct. And so we've added that in here to hopefully give you all some more options and a leeway with that. And then for the facilitated and formal resolutions, you'll see that the list is a bit longer there. So there are some more range of sanctioning options in those resolutions. And then this other one that we want to highlight too is academic integrity probation. This is actually new this year in fall of 2020. And so this is really an intermediate step between the grade penalty and then a more severe disciplinary sanction. And so we wanted to have some type of middle ground really for students that maybe have had multiple violations, but maybe really aren't at that suspension level yet, but we want to put them on warning to say, you know, this has happened multiple times, you know, if something else were to happen, you're looking likely at suspension. And so we wanted to give them some type of disciplinary status to put them on warning. And so really what this means is that they're not in good conduct standing with the university. It's separate from academic probation, so it doesn't have anything to do with their grades. And it's also separate from conduct probation, which is what could come from a violation of the Code of Student Responsibility, so some of those alcohol and drug violations. So it is separate from both of those, but really just meaning they're not in good conduct standing. Something else happens, you could be looking at a more severe sanction. So that is new this year, so we're hoping that is successful and can help us with that intermediate ground there. And then the last column is the educational sanctions that can be utilized if we feel that a student, you know, maybe needs to get connected to some other resources on campus and can help with, you know, whatever maybe have led to them violating the code in the academic setting. And then for this one, like James was saying, we do get some questions about, you know, what if this, what if that? And so we wanted to include some of these on here as well for some of the ones that we do get asked frequently. So the first one being, what if I don't report a violation? And so this one is a little bit hard because if instructors or even maybe students, if they don't report those violations, we're unable to hold those students accountable for that. And so this could lead to the student violating the policy multiple times before they're actually held accountable. So a good example of this is when maybe an instructor calls us and says, you know, this student has been cheating the whole semester in my class. This is the 4th time I told them, and they keep doing it. And they've done this so many times, and I think that they should be suspended. They need to go. And so we look in our database and we see that they haven't actually violated the policy before, this would be considered their first offense. And so because some of those other times in the semester weren't reported and weren't dealt with through the process, then we're unable to hold that student accountable for those other times, and we have to go with the first violation for this this first time. And so we also get questions about, what if I can't get in contact with the student, or what if they're avoiding me? This would be a case where it could go through a facilitated resolution. And so we would want you to just contact our office and we can help navigate that for you. So we have found that sometimes, instructors will reach out to a student multiple times via email and they don't respond. And then we send them a letter and sometimes they find that a little bit more scary, I think. And so then they resurface a bit and we're able to get in contact with them. So if it does happen, feel free to let us know and we're happy to help you navigate what that looks like moving forward. And then our last one here is, what if I don't follow the process? And so this one also gets a bit tricky, similar to the one, what if I don't report it? So our process and the code is really designed to protect both the student and the instructor's rights. And so working outside of that process is problematic. And so if that does occur, the university may not be able to support that decision or to hold that student accountable at all because the process wasn't followed and things were mishandled. It could also provide a valid basis for a student's appeal, whether that be within our process or a grade appeal or an academic petition or something like that. And so we always encourage instructors to follow the process. And if there's concerns or questions, we're happy to help navigate that for you because we know it can get a little bit messy and sometimes can be difficult to navigate, but we're always happy to help you do that. And so that is the best way to hold students accountable, is through that process and following the university policy. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Sean now to go over some of the bulk of what we wanted to talk to you guys about today, of the tips and strategies.
All right, thanks, Laura. Good afternoon. That's what time it is, everyone. So what we're going to turn to now is some things a little bit more focused in trying to shift some methodologies or leverage the technology that the university has to implement some academic assessments or other things within your courses, kind of along these lines of using technology, issuing tests, and then just overall course design that can lend itself to better methodology in the online environment. So I'll start with technology and talking a little bit about some of the options that you have there. So I'm sure everyone on the chat here or the call here has various levels of use with Canvas, but I think one of the best things I can do is advocate for utilizing the information that you can get from Canvas, whether that's proactively, so just seeing if students are reading things or coming to class, or engaged, if you're doing an asynchronous class, are they coming to class, so to speak, and reaching out if students don't. We actually have some instructors that will refer them to the Student Assistance and Support Services Department because it may seem strange to them that if it's 3 weeks in the class, someone has never logged into Canvas, maybe not everything is going okay, or there's ways that we can, try and check in with them. And then if you do have obviously an issue, those tools can be helpful to understand when a student is explaining themselves during a meeting with you, if it's an informal, or with our office, if it's moved past that informal resolution phase, does the computer tell the same story, right? And a lot of times that can be something that helps, for lack of a better term, adjudicate those discrepancies. One thing we've seen some instructors do, whether this is at the beginning of the semester with some sort of positive affirmation of an academic integrity statement or awareness, you can go ahead and put that maybe if you have like a getting started module at the beginning of the semester, maybe you have them do that. Some professors have students make that the last question on every graded assessment they submit. So if they take a test, the last question always is, I confirm I didn't cheat, just again to kind of reiterate that this is important and it's a priority, or that they have to affirm it at the beginning so that they know what those expectations are. Even if we go back in class or you're teaching a hybrid class, I'd encourage you to do this for anything in person as well, on a cover page on an exam or something like that, writing down and having students sign a statement about the Code of Academic Integrity and things like that, just to show that it's something that you care about. We do encourage folks, if they would like to utilize the new Canvas module that we created on academic integrity, which has some slides and then a subsequent quiz. All of that can be modified. So if you're in a field, for example, computer science has a lot of very specific rules. They will add in some custom information, and then they can tweak that to the course. We've had over 200 instructors download that module and import it into one or more of their courses this semester. And that is available at all times through the Commons button in Canvas. And there's directions on our website for how you can implement that tool. Laura mentioned a little bit earlier some of those built-in plagiarism detection. So Turnitin SimCheck, Lockdown Browser, and then the monitor. So the main difference of those being Lockdown Browser doesn't actively monitor the students during the exam, with the camera and making them scan the room or monitor them for looking away. If you're issuing an exam, especially one like a final where it's worth a lot of grade, you might look at something with a little bit more active participation and monitoring, like the Respondus monitor, as opposed to the Lockdown Browser. And then again, we mentioned this earlier, but Canvas does maintain detailed activity logs as far as what's going on in your courses, when people even click out of a specific screen. So if someone took a really long time to do a 10-question quiz and you go look at that, you'll see how many times they click out. So you don't necessarily have to use Lockdown Browser. Maybe you only do it if you think someone cheated after, but obviously there's also proactive steps that you can take as well. So when it comes to online testing, there are a few things that we encourage. The first is that you can utilize time tests so that students are completing it in a reasonable amount of time, because again, it doesn't flag for you unless you go directly look how long they spent in that assessment. And that can minimize the student's ability to consult with outside resources if you didn't implement Lockdown Browser. So that way they aren't spending an hour looking up or Googling questions. Or talking to other students via GroupMe or things that you would never maybe know are happening, or sitting in a room together and doing it. Obviously when people aren't in class, there's all sorts of things that we don't know. We do encourage folks from kind of that pedagogical standpoint to think more about implementing questions that are short answer, paragraphs. You could even do video recorded, right? So have a student record a video and submit it as an assessment, as opposed to that typical multiple choice style question. I think we need to just kind of think about what's going to be the best way to get the information from the student without some of those more standard assessments that are maybe easier to cheat on. We also encourage, each semester and from even within the quiz, to use more questions than you have available. So some of you may know that Canvas will allow you to use a question pool so that students aren't all getting the same questions in the same order, which again, if people are texting or trying to communicate during an exam that's not synchronous or monitored, that would limit their ability to do that, especially if only one question is displayed at a time as opposed to the entire exam. Also a setting that you can implement working in Canvas. Of course, CTL is a great resource for helping you all set those things up or modifying your current course if there are concerns that arise. And then I did address earlier, just adding that statement on what those expectations are, especially in a digital environment, confirming, no, you're not allowed to use outside materials, or yes, you are, and here's the limit, or whatever that may be for your specific course. And then the last thing here is just talking overall in general about course design and the way that you address this in class. So making sure that, when you're using or when you're trying to prevent academic misconduct, that you have as much of an open door policy for students so that they can build that sense of trust with you, as well as so that students can approach. A lot of times we know from talking with students during these meetings, most of them don't cheat because they just are lazy and don't care. Most of them are encountering challenge and they feel like they don't have someone they can approach, especially with being not in person for a significant number of our courses this semester, or they feel like they, something maybe else happened, maybe they got sick or a family member died, or something happened that put them back in a wall and they ended up doing something. And I always tell students, and I know we all do, hey, why didn't you tell your professor this in the first place, to at least start there. And so we always encourage as much as possible to keep that open door policy about what you're willing to do as far as modifying or adjusting things for students, or giving them alternative assignments. Students have actually really gravitated also towards using the discussion board to answer questions because, again, it kind of creates this idea that if I have a question, maybe other people will chime in and have the same question. Or, you know, as one of my professors said in my doctoral program, if you have that question, someone else probably does too. So unless it's really private, let's talk about it in a public forum so that we can make sure that everyone is on the same page. And then, of course, you know, we just want to make sure that we're encouraging you all to report suspected violations. Laura touched on this a little earlier, but you know, we're willing to work with you to make sure that if you're not sure how to look more into something, maybe you need to get some more information or evidence before you want to confront a student, and you're not really sure where to start with that or what tools are available. We're happy to do that. It's something that, you know, we want to make sure you feel comfortable doing. And also, we know for most people, this online teaching is even more work than what it already was instructing. And, you know, we're happy to help balance some of that out as much as we possibly can. Or even proactively, if at the beginning of a semester, or you have a unique assignment, you want to talk with us about what are some ways that we think you could implement to minimize academic misconduct opportunities. Again, we're happy to consult pretty much any time. I do want to briefly answer the question that was asked about Chegg and Course Hero, because someone asked that question and I said I would mention it now. And the question posed was essentially, how do I know if my materials are there? And then what can I do about that, and what are the implications of that? And so the answer to that question is really the only way you can know is to go look yourself. And then the second thing about that is, well, what do I do if I find those things, or will it cost me money? The answer is yes and no. Most of the sites will offer some sort of limited access for free to like a page of a document instead of all 10 pages or something like that. And unfortunately, specifically Course Hero, that's actually their exact model, is they encourage students to upload documents to give them access to more things. So upload 10 documents from your own classes, get access to 20 documents, right? It's kind of like a little bit of a Ponzi scheme, right? And they brand themselves like, oh, if you upload a bunch of documents, you can be entered into a scholarship. And so students just start dumping things that they have on there, often not realizing that really the only thing they can do that with is their own handwritten notes. Taking your slides or your tests or anything that you created as a part of the instructional materials would be problematic. So if you do encounter that, most of those companies, if you email them, will take them down at your request because you have copyright over your own course materials. And I also would encourage you just to let your students know this, because some students really think if someone hands me a test back, it's my test, I can do with it what I want. Again, with there being less paper versions of things, hopefully that will mitigate that. But also a lot of us tend to upload these things as PDF when we are instructing online. And so just be aware that those things will be out there. And I would encourage you to minimize what you do give back to students if you don't want that shared, or what you make available online, because ultimately it's very, very difficult to truly lock down, so to speak, our course materials, because, you know, I mean, even if you didn't let them download it, they could take a screenshot, right? There's a lot of ways to put those things out there. But the way they're generally organized is very similar to like a course catalog. So if you go on their website, look for UNC Charlotte, look for your department, look for your course code, you're probably going to see a series of documents there. When I worked at my last institution, this was something we addressed a lot. And so, you know, we were constantly reaching out to those companies and asking them to remove those, and they are pretty complicit with that. And we also will work with faculty. If a student is referred for that, we can require them to contact the company and ask that their account be canceled so that those documents are removed as well. So if you ever have a problem with that, or you need some help navigating that, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to go ahead and do that for you.
Thanks, Sean. So moving on into some resources, I know we talked about this one a little bit, Sean did a few slides ago, but the Academic Integrity Canvas module is new this year. And so in knowing that things have transitioned online and wanting to be proactive in educating students about academic integrity as a whole, we created this module to be able to upload into your Canvas courses so that students can go through this module, and there's a short quiz at the end. And so basically what it is that it's a series of slides that goes through everything from what is academic integrity, why is it important, why should I as a student care about that, and then what does the code at UNC Charlotte say about it, what can and cannot do. It goes through a little bit about the process and what some of those consequences could be if they were to be found in violation. And then, like I said, at the end, there is a short multiple choice quiz about the content that is in the slides. And so this is located in the Canvas Commons, and so you can easily import that into your courses. The one thing that we do ask you to do is if you are, say you have it in your classes for this fall and you want to transfer and have it in your Canvas courses for the spring, if you'll go back to the Canvas Commons page and import it that way into your new course, that's how you'll get the updates in the module. So periodically we'll update it either with some new content, or maybe the policy has been updated and so we want to update that content that we're sharing out. And so if you just copy it from like your fall course to your spring course, you won't actually be able to get those updates. So just make sure you're re-downloading it from the Commons page so that you can get those updates and it's the most accurate and up-to-date information. The other thing is that it can be customizable, and so if there is something in the module that you don't want to include, let's say you don't write papers in your class and you don't feel the need for your students to know about plagiarism or something, you can take those slides out and not include those in the module. And you can also add things to it. So if your program has specific expectations or specific things that you want to share with students about maybe academic integrity in the business college or in the business field in general or something, you can upload that material to the module and have that be a part of it as well. So it is customizable and you can add and take away things as you want. And as Sean said, faculty have already been downloading that and importing it into their course, and so we would encourage you to do that. This has been something that we have wanted to do for a while and to be proactive with our education in this way, but being online in the fall and with COVID and everything, it really pushed us to get it out there quicker. And so we're excited about this, and we hope that you're able to utilize it and also see success in your courses with it. And the next thing is that our office does share a quarterly newsletter related to academic integrity. So we put it out twice a semester, and it will either have data, trends, any updates to the policy, any tips, any resources, really lots of different things could come in our newsletter. And so we've been doing this for about 2 years now. Folks seem to like it to just stay up to date with what's going on, and any new things that we're seeing that we want to share out that would be helpful for you all. And so we don't send it out to all faculty at this point, but if you are not currently getting it and you do want to receive it, we just send it out by email twice a semester. And so my email is on here. If you want to email me, I will put you on our list for you to be able to get that, and we'd be happy to send that to you so you have that information. Okay, so in closing, here is our contact information. We are mostly working remotely at this point. We have one staff member, our associate director, who is in the office Monday through Friday, but for the most part, the best way to reach us and our staff is by email. And so if you have a certain staff member that you usually work with, feel free to email them, or if you don't, our generic office email account is on here, UNC Charlotte, scai.uncc.edu. Also, if you call us, it will ask that you leave a voicemail, and that will go to our generic email. And so then we can forward that email to whatever staff member needs to get that information and respond. And so King 217 is our location. Again, we only have one staff member in there, and so the best way to reach us is definitely by email. Also, a bulk of this information, if not all of it, is all on our website, scai.uncc.edu. This has all of the step-by-step instructions for if you're doing an informal resolution, what do you need to do if a student has a prior, how do you go through that facilitated process. It has all the tips and strategies on there, as well as the directions for the Canvas module. And we've also created some new information for students on there as well. So feel free to check that out. That has loads of information on there. And feel free to share that information with other faculty that you know would think it would be helpful. So I think that is kind of the main things that we wanted to highlight for you today. So we'll take any questions. And I know Jules may stop the recording at this point too.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation today. I am going to stop the recording.